So I think we will get started. My name is Patty Breslin, and I am with Stanley Under 2050, and we are putting on this Resilient Home series. And we are doing the third of that series with induction stoves. And the agenda tonight is just kind of an overview looking at, and I'm going to sort of be a little bit distracted because I'm also admitting people here. It's just me and Chris here tonight, so we're doing a few things at once. So anyway, we're going to be talking about going electric and an overview of that, just generally, and then move into Induction 101 and kind of the technology and so forth behind that. Then Chris is going to talk about rebates and incentives and some how to start to take advantage of those, and then some resources that you can use to get the whole ball rolling and sort of be able to put a plan in place to move something forward if you want to. And then we're going to do Q&A, and we actually may stop after each section and allow questions. I would ask maybe that you don't put questions in the chat because it's hard to keep track of what's going on and keep track of the chat. And as I said, there's just two of us here. So we'll stop and we'll ask you to raise hands, and then we'll just take live questions. With that, I want to introduce, well, actually, why don't you, I'll finish and then I'll introduce you, Chris. Why don't you go to the next slide? Great. Okay, so just to give you a little bit more information about this series that we're doing. So this is the third of 4. And the first was a solar for residential use. Second was heat pumps and water heaters. And tonight we're doing induction stoves. All 3 of those are available. Well, this one will shortly be available at the link you see there. Our website, there's Resilient Home recordings, and you can get both the presentation and the video if you or somebody you know wants to watch them and get the resource information from the presentation. In 2 weeks, we will be doing the last of the series, which is gray water basics, talking about laundry to landscape systems, plus a little bit, we're going to just do a little quick intro to rain barrels and water catchment. And so if you haven't signed up for that and you want to, just go to our website and you should be able to do that. With that, I want to introduce Chris Hunter, who's with Stop Waste, and Stop Waste / Bayren. I'll let him explain that relationship. And they're doing a ton in the area of electrification. And with that, go ahead. I'd like to have Chris go ahead.
Great. Thanks, Patty. And thanks everyone for giving us some of your time on a Monday. I know it's busy out there. So yeah, my name is Chris Hunter. I am a program specialist with Stop Waste. I'll explain a little bit more who Stop Waste is on the next and who Bayren is in the next couple of slides. But yeah, I want to talk to you about induction cooking and just home electrification in general. So for those of you who were on the heat pump webinar a couple of weeks ago, these first few slides might be familiar, but for those who won't, we'll just want to lay the groundwork so we're all on the same page and have kind of a familiar language to talk about this with. So yeah, here's my agenda. Just want to talk a little bit about what home electrification is, why we're promoting this, and then get into actually what is induction cooking, how does it work, some of the benefits, and then we'll get into rebates and resources. And like Patty said, we have a pretty short presentation today. It's a small group, so I'm happy to keep this free flowing. If you have any questions that come up throughout as I'm speaking, feel free to just raise your hand, and I can stop at the end of each section or throughout the presentation. Happy to answer questions. I also, if anyone is on the call who already has an induction stove or has used one in the past, would love if at some point towards the end, you're willing to share your experience and let everyone know how that's been going for you. So Just to start, for those of you who are not familiar with Stop Waste, we are a public agency serving Alameda County and its 14 districts, as well as the 2 sanitary districts in the county. And we are independent from the county, but I kind of like to describe us as the outward-facing sustainability arm of Alameda County. So as the name suggests, we do a lot of work around solid waste reduction and reducing landfill waste. So we enforce various statewide mandates and assist our cities to comply with state law. We do environmental education. We run some food waste reduction campaigns and so on. And then there's also a team of us that works on issues related to green buildings and energy efficiency. And so within that team, a lot of our work is funded by the Bay Area Regional Energy Network, or BayREN. And so Stop Waste is just Alameda County. BayREN covers the entire 9-county Bay Area. And really the goal of BayREN is to run various energy saving programs and resources to help the state meet its really ambitious climate goals. So we offer programs for single family homeowners. That's mostly what we'll be talking about today. We also have programs for multifamily or apartment buildings, small businesses, realtors, local government staff, you name it. And all of the BayREN programs and the rebates that we offer are ratepayer funded. So what that means is every month on your PG&E bill, there's a small fee. I think it's called the Public Purpose Program Surcharge. It's kind of a mouthful. It's usually just a couple of dollars a month, and then that goes to the state, who then reallocates it back down to local governments like us to run these programs. So kind of like to say, you're essentially already paying for this. And so we really want to just do some education and get you to take advantage of all of these great rebates and programs. So yeah, why are we doing this whole series on electrification? That might be a term that you've heard recently. It's definitely gaining traction and becoming more of a common term people throw around. Sometimes it's used interchangeably with decarbonization, and that can be a really complex, daunting topic. A lot of people are intimidated by everything that decarbonization entails. So I like to break it down into basically these 3 buckets that we need to do to get to zero emissions kind of for the whole energy sector. So the first is just to simply reduce our demand, both through more efficient appliances, as well as some behavior change. So, things like turning the lights off when you're not in the room, as well as getting Energy Star high efficiency refrigerators and dishwashers and things like that. So the first is really just reducing the total amount of energy that we use. The second is transitioning our electricity grid to run on clean, renewable sources. And in California, we've already been making really great progress towards that with all the solar and wind power in the state. And hopefully everyone here is familiar with East Bay Community Energy, or EBCE, but they are actually the default electricity provider for Alameda County. So essentially they source the electricity for the county, and then it's delivered via PG&E lines. And so they've done a really great job of shifting as much of the grid to these clean solar, wind, hydroelectric sources of power that don't produce any fossil fuels and are good for the climate. And then the third step, once we've done both of those, is to then switch out all of our gas burning machines and appliances for more efficient alternatives that can actually run on that clean electricity. So for example, a lot of people, when they want to make their home more green and reduce their environmental footprint, the first thing that comes to mind is adding solar panels. That's a great thing to do. I don't want to dissuade anyone from doing solar panels. But if you add solar panels to your home, that's great for, giving you clean electricity to run your refrigerator with or turn your TV on. But you can't run a gas stove with solar panels, and you can't run a gas furnace from solar energy. And so really that third step is making sure that everything we use that uses energy uses the clean energy, not the dirty fossil fuel, gas and oil. And what I like about this framework is you can really scale it up and down at any scale. So this works at the scale of the entire economy. You can also scale it down to your individual home. So within one home, that first step might be things like adding attic insulation that reduce your heating demands. It might be adding LED light bulbs, things like that. The second step, really the ideal would be every home would have solar panels and battery storage. That's not always possible. And so through EVZE, you can actually upgrade your account and pay a couple dollars more a month to source all of your electricity from those clean sources. And then third, again, would be replacing all the appliances inside your home with heat pumps and induction cooking that we'll be talking about. So yeah, as this becomes more and more of a goal and really more front and center in the climate discussion, there's a lot of policy discussions happening locally and statewide and federally. So in San Leandro, they are currently developing, it is not passed yet, but they're in the process of developing an all electric reach code, which would mean that new construction will have to be all electric and gas will be banned on new construction. A number of cities in the county have already done this. I think Berkeley was the first in the country, and then a number of cities have followed suit. Again, this is only new construction. No one's going to come and force you to rip out your gas stove, next year, but just it is generally the direction that things are moving, that cities are starting to think about how they can switch their building stocks to run on all electric. And then this isn't just local, statewide. California has already set a rule to ban the sale of new gas furnaces and water heaters by 2030. And actually in the Bay Area, that might be even sooner, more like 2027 or 2028. So this transition is coming, and we really want people to be prepared and do it in a way that makes sense for you. And we have rebates to help do that. So just a couple of implications of all of this. So as more and more of our electricity grid relies on solar and wind, which aren't always running, it means that, essentially the power mix of the grid and how clean the electricity you're using actually varies based on the time of day. And so during the day when the sun is shining, actually a pretty significant portion of our electricity comes from solar. But then the evening, right as the sun is setting and that's coming offline, is also right when demand is going up. And so those hours of 4 to 9 p.m. are when the state has to turn on a lot of the really dirtiest power plants in the state. And so the power from 4 to 9 is the most polluting, and with new PG&E rates that they introduced last year, it's actually more expensive now. And so when we talk about energy efficiency and reducing your footprint, it's not just how much energy you use, but actually when you use it as well. And so shifting your load from those 4 to 9 p.m. hours to other times of the day will also save you money as well. And then just some longer term trends that we're seeing in the market is in the long term, we expect that gas prices will continue to go up relative to electricity. And the main reason for that is most of the cost of gas is fixed costs. So things like maintaining the actual pipelines. And so as more and more people transition off of gas and make their homes all electric, it'll be the same amount of fixed costs for all that gas, but fewer people paying it. And so each person will have to pay a little bit more. And so making that switch sooner rather than later can actually save you quite a bit of money in the long run. And then finally, we just see the need for resilience. And I know this is a question that comes up a lot when we talk about induction cooking, and I can do my best to address it. But we've seen more of these power shutoffs from PG&E to prevent wildfires. There's always the risk of a major earthquake, like the one we just saw in Turkey yesterday. And we'll talk a little bit about that, but there's actually been some studies that have found that in the case of a major earthquake in California, electricity service is expected to come back much faster, probably in a matter of days, than gas, which might be offline for weeks to months. So in that sense, switching to electric actually might be more resilient. And then also, as the last couple of years have shown us, really indoor air quality is so important, and the health of our homes is really important. And then extreme heat doesn't really matter as much for induction, but that was relevant while we were talking about heat pumps the other week. So there's a lot of benefits of switching your home to all electric, aside from the climate. I think climate reasons are a great reason, but that's not the only reason. So I'll talk about health specifically when it comes to gas stoves. It is a major issue. More and more research is coming out every year that shows that gas stoves are one of the leading causes of childhood asthma in the state, and really have a lot of impacts to worsen asthma and other respiratory issues. Safety, of course, you can burn yourself more easily on a gas stove. There's also always risks of leaks or explosions. Comfort, again, for the induction, or just for electric homes in general, there's a lot of comfort benefits. They're quieter. If you do a heat pump, it provides cooling and heating. For induction stoves, in terms of comfort, they're easier to clean, and a lot of people prefer them just how they cook. They're faster, they're more precise. I'll talk a little bit about that later on. And then finally, utility bill savings. So most electric appliances are much more efficient. And so even though electricity is a little bit more expensive than gas right now per unit, you're using so much less of it that in most cases, it'll end up saving you on your utility bill. I'm gonna just pause, see if there's any questions right now on that. All right. So I want to talk a little bit about induction cooking. That's why we're here. Some of you might know Stephanie Prugel. This is her on the right. She recently made the switch and was gracious enough to let her come into her home and take some pictures of all of her new appliances. Too bad she's not here today, but I'm sure she's happy to answer questions. But before I get into how induction works, I want to just talk a little bit about how gas stoves work and how electric resistance or electric coil stoves work, and why induction is superior to those, in my opinion. So gas, if you think about it, how it's working, you have the stove, which is burning gas, that's releasing heat, and then you have a pocket of air that's like 1 to 2 inches high. The burning the gas is heating up that bubble of air, and then you're hoping that heat transfers into your pan, which then transfers into your food. So if you think about it, that's really not that efficient. A lot of that heat just goes up around the side of your pan, it gets wasted and lost. And so you're paying to burn this gas that's not actually benefiting you and how you need it. So gas stoves, we find they're about 30 to 40% efficient, which means for every 10 units of gas that you burn on your gas stove, only 3 to 4 units of heat get into your food. How electric coil stoves work, that's what a lot of people are familiar with and what a lot of people think of when they hear electric cooking. And those have a bad reputation, and for good reason. They're not good to cook with. And basically how those work is you have a coil that you run electricity through, it gets really hot, it gets your stovetop extremely hot, and then again, that heat, you just hope it transfers into your pan and heats your food that way. Again, it's more efficient than gas. Those are 60 to 70% efficient, but they take a long time to heat up, they take a long time to cool down, it's really easy to burn yourself, and again, people don't have great experiences working on those or cooking with those. How induction works is a totally different type of technology, and it uses magnets. So I'm not an engineer, but I'll do my best to explain this. So basically you have a electric coil running this, and those who remember high school physics, when you run a current through a coil that's wrapped around, it produces an electromagnetic field in the opposite direction. And so what you're doing is you're running electricity through this coil. It's producing an electromagnetic field, which activates the electrons in the metal of the pan directly. So you're not actually creating any heat. You're actually just turning the pan itself into the vessel for heat, if that makes sense. And so it's almost instant how fast your pan heats up. It's really like within seconds, your pan is hot, unlike with gas, where you have to sometimes wait a couple minutes to get it hot enough. And actually, if you didn't have a pan on your stove, if you have an induction stove, you turn it on, you can turn it on full blast, put your hand right on the surface of it, and it won't burn you. It won't feel hot at all. It'll only react with metal, with magnetic metal. And so as you can imagine, this is much more efficient because you're not wasting any heat to the environment. All of the heat is going straight into your pan and into your food. It also is safer. It's a lot harder to burn yourself with induction. And it's a lot more responsive because it heats up the pan so quickly. It also cools off pretty quickly. And so chefs really like it because it's really responsive and it's really precise. You can actually even set like specific temperatures. So say you're sous vide something, you can set it to be the exact temperature that you need, and it will maintain that temperature with precision. So I'll move on. I can try to explain that a little bit more. I know the science is hard, but hopefully that makes sense that basically it's using magnets and you're not creating heat, or you're not releasing any heat into the air. It's all going directly into the pan.
Chris, we have a question, I think.
Yes.
Annie?
Hi, does the pan have to be made of a certain kind of material, or can it be any standard pan?
Yeah, so basically any pan that is magnetic will work. So the best test for this, if you want to know if any of your pans would work with induction, is you just have a refrigerator magnet and the magnet sticks to the bottom of the pan, it would work with induction. So cast iron works amazing with induction. Stainless steel works really well. Enameled cast iron works. The main types of pans that wouldn't work would be anything with a copper or aluminum bottom. And so unfortunately, if you have copper or aluminum pans, those wouldn't work. However, there are some workarounds that you can get, but yeah, anything stainless steel or cast iron works really well. So this is just a short little 3-minute video I'll show. This is he's a famous YouTube and TikTok star who's a professional chef who made the switch to induction. I think he makes a good case for why he prefers it. And so coming from a chef, I think it might mean a little bit more than coming from me. So, oops. Sorry, I'm going to make it not full screen because it's.
We don't have
lagging.
any sound.
Oh, you don't have sound? Oh no. Okay, this might not work then.
No, you need to check, when you go into share screen, you need to check something on the bottom left about sound. It's like share sound or something.
Ah, I got it. Thank you.
When I started posting my cooking videos, one of the
Can I get a thumbs up or confirmation?
Yeah, thumbs up.
Okay, sorry about that. Thank you for stopping me.
questions I wasn't really expecting to get was about the use of my electric burners. I ended up getting quite a few inquiries about them both on Instagram and TikTok. And what I learned is that induction burners are not as common as I thought. So when I got asked to do a video about a kitchen technology that I had been using for years, I gladly obliged. Because it wasn't just a great way to cook, it was also good for your health and the environment. A few years ago, if you asked me which was my favorite heat source to work with, I would have said gas. Probably 90% of the cooks out there will say the same. Electric coils and glass tops are nightmares to deal with at any level of cooking. That changed when I learned about induction burners. I started with just one plug-in cooktop. I had it for years and I used it frequently when I did my pop-ups. It was great because in pop-up situations there isn't always a vent, and I could get away with using this where portable gas burners were not allowed. As I got used to it, I started using it more and more, expanding my collection to the point where they are now pretty much all I use. Oh cool, I'm cooking with magnets, I thought. And that excited the techie in me, but as I used it more, I realized there were a lot of benefits to having this as a regular part of my kitchen arsenal. Basically, the trick with induction is that there is a magnetic field working so that the pan is heating itself from within. If you think about it that way, it becomes easier to understand. With any other burner, in some way you're waiting for that source of heat, whether it be a coil or a glass top or a flame, to push that heat through the pan. With induction, depending on how you're using it, it's pretty much immediate. It's not really making any kind of sacrifices versus an open flame as much as it's just an adjustment in timing. There's less time you have to react, and that takes some getting used to, but over time you'll be just as efficient with it as you would a gas flame. Besides energy savings, there are other benefits to induction for your home. As a cook who worked in multiple kitchens, and as someone who ran his own space, I value the comfort of my crew, and working all day in a hot kitchen is exhausting. The fact that induction produces very little industrial waste heat was my main reason for making the switch. My small kitchen was much cooler, and the lack of fumes meant that I wouldn't have to spend money on high-powered ventilation. I'd later learned that the harmful fumes from gas burners is a massive source of indoor air pollution. It only reinforced my thinking to make the full switch for my home. Other benefits include the fact that they're safer for families since they don't have any exposed flames, and they're way easier to clean, which to me is a huge selling point. As this technology becomes more accessible, I do think those of us with access to it have the responsibility to adopt this from a climate standpoint. Fossil gas is now the largest source of climate pollution in the United States. Numerous studies show that moving to clean electric appliances for heating and cooking is the most cost-effective and lowest risk solution to cutting climate pollution from buildings, which account for 29% of US emissions and 40% of emissions globally. Not everyone has the privilege of doing this, I know, but as someone who does, I see it as a personal responsibility. Honestly, it wasn't much of a sacrifice. It's only made my life easier in the long run.
Oops. All right.
When I started posting,
Yes, I think that's a pretty succinct reason for really covered a lot of the different benefits that we talked about for induction. That really, it's not a sacrifice for cooking, and more chefs are switching over. Barron has actually done a number of events with professional chefs. Unfortunately, we couldn't get any of them today, but if anyone is familiar with Martin Yan, we actually just did an event with him the other week that was really fun. And he talked about doing wok cooking with induction and how that's even possible and works really well. So there's a lot of benefits. And it's really not just about climate or health. But I do want to talk a little bit more.
when I started posting,
Okay, there we go. Sorry. I want to talk a little bit more about the health because I think this is really growing as one of the biggest reasons to make the switch. And a lot of you have probably heard some of these stats and research recently. So I'm just going to read some of these out. I don't normally like to read word for word my slides, but there's a new study just about 2 months ago that did an analysis of childhood asthma cases in the entire country and also in California. And they found that over 20% of childhood asthma cases in California are directly attributable to a gas stove. So basically that means if we were to switch all of our stoves in the state to electric or induction stoves, 20% or childhood asthma would go down by 20%, which is huge. That would have such a big impact on the state and quality of life here. And really the reason that stoves cost so much is there's just a lot of byproducts in gas. So really what you're doing, it's natural gas is just methane that you're burning in your kitchen. And so when you burn methane, it releases carbon dioxide, it releases carbon monoxide and formaldehyde. And actually probably the most harmful thing it releases is nitrogen dioxide or NO2, which is one of the leading causes of asthma. And so it's essentially equivalent to having a smoker in the house of having a gas stove in terms of the level of pollution and that it causes and the likelihood that it worsens asthma. And one of the most shocking things that they found is that actually, even when your stove is off, it's still leaking a lot of those pollutants into your home. So even when you're not using it, it's always leaking just a little bit. And so it's really harmful. It's really, if you want to improve health and indoor quality, this is easily the #1 thing you can do to improve the quality of air in your home. Just a couple of the stats here from the Rocky Mountain Institute, which is one of the leading think tanks on this. They've done some studies and found that children in homes with gas stoves have a 24 to 42% increased risk of having asthma or of developing asthma. And of children that do have asthma, when they've done comprehensive energy, health, and safety retrofit programs, and that includes a little bit more than a gas stove. That would also include things like mold reduction or moisture reduction and windows. But in homes with children with asthma, when they've done those comprehensive retrofits, hospital admissions fell by nearly 85% and emergency room visits by 68% within a year. So it's not just hypothetical. This really does have a huge impact on our health and the health of our families. I just saw a comment from Lawrence that a new report shows that they leak benzene that causes cancer. Yeah, thanks for adding that. I think that might have been the same report as this 20%. maybe in a follow-up, we can share some of those links to the stories, but yeah, it seems like every few months there's a new study that comes out that talks about the health impacts of gas stoves. And so I think that's probably a more important reason than anything else. I know we started with the climate impacts, but really, yeah, I think just as more and more research comes out, it becomes more clear how important this is. So just to summarize some of the other benefits, really, I talked about efficiency. Very little heat is wasted with induction. The health we just talked about, speed and precision. You can boil a pot of water in half the time with induction as you can with gas. And again, that's because the pot heats up instantly. You're not waiting for the pot to heat up. And they're also just more powerful. Safer, it's also easier to clean. When you're done, the surface doesn't get hot, so food doesn't stick. There's no grates, it's just a flat glass surface. When you're done cooking, you just wipe it down with a cloth and you're all clean and good to go. So really, so many benefits. Really, whatever your motivation is, there's probably some benefit to this. And before I get into rebates and resources, does anyone have other questions just on how induction works and what the benefits are, or any struggles that people have heard about?
You want to raise your hand? It's probably the easiest way.
I can't see. Okay.
I'm looking, but I don't.
Well, all right. Well, we will have. So, okay, someone I see in the chat, can you talk about the interior of the oven for baking, broiling? So induction only refers to the stove top. That's really the only place where the technology works. So most induction ranges would have an induction stove top and then a traditional electric oven. So the oven is still the same as the oven you're probably used to. It's really just the stove top that is different. And then I see another comment here about the peak power from 4 to 9 p.m. Isn't that true of the remainder of the night as well? It is in a sense that solar goes offline the entire night. However, the reason that 4 to 9 p.m. is the worst is because that's when that's when demand is the highest, and it coincides with solar not being available. So from 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. or so, we still don't have solar panel, but there's just less overall demand for electricity. And a lot of that is actually met by wind or hydroelectric power. And so that's why 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. is a little bit better than the 4 to 9 p.m.
Okay, Anthony, do you want to ask your question?
Yes, thank you. For induction cooktops, do they run, or do they require a 220 outlet, or are they generally 110?
So if the whole range, if you install an entire range in your home, typically that would be a 220. And so it's possible that you need some electrical work completed. My parents recently got one. I think that was actually the biggest holdup, is they had to get an electrician to do some rewiring. However, there are 110 options. I know there's a few brands that have full ranges that are 110. There's also portable or plug-in induction hobs that might just be 1 or 2 burners. They can plug into any normal wall outlet. So there's a range of options, but if you're trying to replace your entire oven and stove range, 220 would be the most common.
So there's a question in the chat about the workaround for non-magnetic cookware.
Yeah, so they sell these, I'm blanking on what they're called. It's basically a stainless steel sheet with a handle on it, and that goes, you can put that on the stove and then put your pan on top of that, and it'll still work pretty well. It's not nearly as efficient as having an induction friendly pan, but those work pretty well, and you can buy those for maybe $20 or so.
Okay,
And
and
then I'm gonna see here, what other respiratory illnesses? Sorry. Yeah, we can send out a couple of the articles about the studies. Someone mentioned benzene, how that can cause cancer. I think asthma is really the the respiratory illness you hear most associated with gas stoves. However, basically any sort of respiratory issue will be made worse or could be made worse with gas. And so, I know that's not a super specific answer, but hopefully that answers it a little bit.
Mitch, are you still here? You want to, do you want to give a little bit about your experience, or are you in a rush to leave?
Yeah, I can pop in here real quickly. We actually switched to it, or decided that we needed to switch to it because my lungs are truly crap, which have been worse after COVID. And so with all the studies that have been coming out, we decided that we really needed to make this move. And I have to say, the $750 rebate from Bayrin was a nice bonus. So make sure that if you get an induction stove that you sign up to get the rebate from Bayrin. But I've been really happy with it. It is absolutely the case that it boils water. Just, it's mind blowing how quickly water boils on these. It really is. And other than really being bummed out by losing a couple of my favorite pans and needing to replace those, it's been great. It's really versatile. I feel like I have a lot of control over the heat level. It took a little while to kind of get used to, you know, where on the dial I am, you know, like to get the right heat level that I want to get. So, you know, it did take a little time to kind of just get used to it, but it's fantastic. And I can get, I was a little surprised. I did end up kind of bumping up to, certainly not the like crazy expensive models, but sort of like the middle models that were out there. I think we paid around $2,500 for ours, with the like, you know, pre-Christmas sales. So I you know, what I'm talking about is sort of in that kind of range price wise. And I've been really happy that the heat level that I can get, at least on the biggest burner that has the highest wattage, is the same as my like the hottest burner that I had on my gas stove, which I was a little bit worried about. Now, I think that if I had gone with the slightly less expensive models, then I might not have the same experience because they didn't have as high of wattage. So paying attention to the wattage that you get on the different burners is a worthwhile thing. But it's been great and it works really well. And honestly, I'm happier with the oven than I was with my gas oven. I feel like it heats things more consistently than my gas oven did. And it's got an air fryer thing. Like it's got, you know, like in addition to convection, it's got like the air fry button, which I have to say, we read on Consumer Reports before even getting it to just like, don't buy any of these stoves based on the air fryer, which I will totally concur with. The air fryer on these stoves is useless. Like it's better to just stick with convection. But yeah, so that has been my experience, and I'm really happy to have moved to it.
Great.
Thanks
Thank you so
sharing.
much for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Can you, if you don't mind me asking, what brand did you go with? Just for everyone else.
Sorry, it like dipped out for a moment. What did you ask?
Oh, what brand did you go with?
I ended up going with the GE. I of course don't see a model number here, but it's a GE that's got a big 11-inch burner in the front on the right, and then the two burners on the left I can actually sync, which when I got, like, that was a feature that I wanted, and I thought that I would have it to then have a griddle, because my gas stove had a griddle, which I used a lot and I kind of miss. But I honestly haven't found a griddle that like spans that properly. However, I have 2 of the like 9 or 10-inch cast iron pans,
Mhm.
and they both, I can basically put them both on here and then sync it, and then I only have to worry about the controls for one.
Huh. Interesting.
Kind of
Cool.
in some ways effectively have the what I was looking for. It's not quite the same as a griddle, but it has served this.
Great.
Well, thanks so much for sharing. Yeah, and one thing that
You're
you brought up is it can be a little bit of a learning curve, but the cool thing is basically once you learn how your stove works, it'll always do that. So like if you learn when you you know, sear chicken breast, 8 is the best level for you. 8 will always cook it the same way. It's unlike gas where sometimes it's hard to get the knob to
Yeah.
exactly the right place. It's always consistent.
Yeah, and it is really nice that that it's really clear to me that I don't lose a lot of heat around the sides of the pans. Like it really is just like it's transferring the heat to the bottom of the pan. So I'm not like the kind of heat that I would end up with in the space above the stove on my gas stove doesn't happen now. And I also used to feel like I had to be really careful. Like if I was cooking in my bathrobe or some, long sleeved fuzzy sweater or something, I'd have to be super careful around the gas stove. And now I don't have to worry about that at all, which is kind of nice.
Yeah.
So I see there's a couple more questions, but I do want to just get through the rebates and then that'll just take a few minutes and then we can spend the
Yay,
rest
rebates.
of the time
Great.
with
I should warn people, the rebates did take a while to happen, but we did eventually get ours. So
sorry, it took you a little while, but glad you ended up getting them. I know we are trying to speed up our processes a little bit. So yeah, I want to just talk a little bit about the Bay Run Home Plus program. So this, sorry for all the text on these next 2 slides, but this is a program that's been around since 2019, and it covers more than just induction. It's really a whole home efficiency and electrification program. We offer up to $5,000 per home in rebates for various upgrades. So we do everything from weatherization or things like insulation and air sealing to furnaces or air conditioners, water heaters, and then finally induction cooktops and a couple of other things. And so we can send out the link. There's more information on the Bay Run website. But it's a great program. It's pretty easy to work with. And when it comes to induction, so I'll just say most of the rebates through the Home Plus program, we do require you to use one of our pre-vetted and enrolled contractors in the program. However, induction is one of the few exceptions to that. You actually can install your induction DIY and still get the rebate. I'm not going to read through this. This is just the process for getting that rebate. But basically, you would go out, purchase your new stove. You have to save the receipts and take a photo of the old appliance, a photo of the new appliance once it's been installed, upload the receipt with the model number, and provide a little bit of additional info. You just upload all of that onto Bay Run's online portal, and then a few weeks later, you should get a check in the mail for $750. And like what Mitch was mentioning, yeah, the rebate covers a pretty good portion of the cost of these. There's a really big range in quality and cost for induction stoves. The lower end ones are probably $1,000 up to $1,500, and the high ones can be several thousands of dollars. But for most kind of medium tier induction ranges, $750 will cover probably a quarter or half, maybe even more of the total cost. And then the one other service that the Bay Run Home Plus program offers is this Home Energy Advisor. This is a really valuable service. It's basically a free call line where you can call for questions. So if you just have questions about how induction works, or what kind of electrical capacity you might need. They can help with that. They can help track your rebate, and if you just need help applying for the rebate, they can help you with that. They can also help you refer you to any other programs out there. And again, this is beyond induction. This is really anything related to energy use in your home. They can either answer a question directly, or if not, refer you to someone who can. So I highly recommend saving this number or email here and getting in touch with an advisor if you need help knowing where to get started. Just a couple other links about the Bayron program. I think, again, you don't really need to go through any of these services for the induction, but these are all great places to get started if you want to do some other work at your home. And here's my contact info if you have any other questions. And then the one last thing I want to pitch is, I mentioned East Bay Community Energy earlier on this call. They have a really great program with Actera, their local nonprofit, that is an induction cooktop lending program. And so if this sounds cool to you, you've never used induction, you just want to try it out before making the jump or committing to one, you can reserve a kit with induction cooktop, a compatible pan, some instructions and recipes, and you would just pick it up and drop it off at your local library. You can get it for 3 weeks, completely free. I would really recommend this for anyone who is curious, but doesn't have any experience working with induction before. I think it's a great way just to get used to it and see if it works for you. What this would include is just a portable, either single or 2 burner hob that can just go on your counter and plug into any normal 110 volt outlet. So it's really low effort. Again, it's open to any Alameda County resident. So would highly recommend trying this out. They do have a little bit of a wait list right now. I think they're trying to get more kits to lower that, but I think the wait list might be around 4 weeks. So I would put your name in now and try it out as soon as you can. And that is all I have. So I think we still have a few minutes left for questions.
Yeah, and there's some new ones in the chat. One
Okay.
of the comments that Mitch had was that he got a 200, had to get a 240 volt breaker put in, and got she's recommending getting more than one quote. The quotes that she got ranged from $250 to $2,500. So that's quite a range. So yeah, get a bunch of different people to give you a bid on any electrical work, really.
Yeah, thanks for putting those. It's always helpful to see actual prices, but yeah, no matter what you're doing, always get multiple quotes. Even with the Bayron contractors, we don't set what prices they can offer. So even if you're using a Bayron contractor, they're pre-vetted, you know they're going to do quality work, but I would still recommend getting several quotes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is a good one from Lawrence. So you don't have to use a contractor to install the induction stove, do you? You can
No, for the induction, the 2 exceptions to that are induction and the heat pump clothes dryer are the 2 things that you can install yourself.
Okay.
Or if you buy it from Home Depot or Lowe's, and they can install it for you. But yeah, for the induction and the heat pump clothes dryer, you do not need to go through a contractor. All of the other Bayron rebates, you do need to use a participating contractor.
Yeah. Good. Okay, and so there's one question here that I think, you know, I don't think that we necessarily are going to be the people to ask, but one was just whether gas was more dangerous for people with compromised immune systems. And, you know, getting into the, you know, specifics of the health concerns, I think we would have to refer you to your doctor or, you know, something like that, because I don't think that, other than we know that just generally speaking, it causes more lung issues, especially for people that have current lung issues. You know, there's in terms of immune systems, it's not something we can help with.
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah,
I'll talk to your doctor about that. The one additional thing I'll add is if you have a pacemaker or another device like that, induction is considered safe with those, but I would speak with your doctor before installing induction at your home, just to make sure. The electromagnetic waves only extend like an inch or two above the surface, so it is safe. But yeah, I would recommend talking to your doctor about that first.
And then, does it tend to trip the breaker? With our recent electric upgrades with the arc flash breakers, almost anything with high power, like a microwave, seems to trip them, and the remedy seems to be replacing them with the older ones.
I'd say if it's installed correctly and your electrical work is installed to meet the capacity that you have, then it shouldn't trip your breakers. I think if that's the issue, then I would recommend getting an electrician out to check that out, and especially before you install the induction. Yeah, you might need to get some rewiring done. But that's not a problem that's innate to induction stoves. It really just depends
any heavy load. Okay, that's all I see in the chat. Does anybody else have a raised hand or want to jump in?
Has anyone else on the call used induction before and have an experience you want to share?
I did buy a stovetop. I mean, not just just like a portable burner type thing. And during COVID, when my son was living in the garage. But I will say the frustrating thing was that I didn't happen to have pans other than cast iron that worked with it. So that was a bit of a bummer. I'm going to imagine that as these things get bigger, there are going to be more pans out there generally that are going to be just by default induction compatible. That would be my guess. So I think this will become less and less of an issue.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was great. I mean, it was, like people say, really fast and easy to control.
Yeah, my main experience, and I've used the portable hobs before. Those work well. And I think I mentioned earlier, I recently convinced my parents to make the switch to induction a few months ago. They've loved it so far. It is a learning curve. It took them, maybe a month to really get completely used to it. So be ready for that. It takes a little bit of getting used to, but yeah, they love it now. Yeah, I've gone there. I helped them cook Christmas dinner. We cooked some steaks and we seared them and get them so hot that it got a really nice crispy sear on them that really is hard to get with gas. Unless you have a really big burner and you're really willing to be patient, let your pan heat up for 10 minutes. So it's been really great. And I think they don't have any regrets and wouldn't go back now if they had the choice. That's my main experience with them. But yeah, unfortunately, I'm a renter and I have a gas stove in my current apartment. But as soon as I have the choice, I will make the switch myself.
Okay, it doesn't look like there are any other questions here. So as I mentioned, here's one. Is it possible to keep the gas stove and put the induction stovetop burner on top? The gas stove only gets used 3 times a year, if that. Would the rebate work?
So that wouldn't be eligible for the rebate. For the rebate, you have to actually replace your gas stove. That's part of what, the pictures to show that you replaced it. So unfortunately, you wouldn't be eligible for the rebate. But yeah, I do know a number of people, especially renters, who don't have a choice, who have bought the portable or plug-in stoves. And there's high quality ones. There's ones that have multiple burners and are really as powerful as a normal stove. But yeah, I know people who've bought those and really just put it on top of their gas stove and use it normally. You just be careful not to actually accidentally turn on the gas and melt your induction. But yeah, that is an option, especially for renters, that I know a lot of people have tried out.
Yeah, and I got one. It was a 2-burner portable, whatever, and I don't remember it being expensive at all because I don't part with money easily, and so I don't think they're very expensive.
Yeah, either. I mean, there's single burner plug-in portable hobs that go as low as $50 from IKEA. Those, to a sense, you get what you pay for. I mean, they have less controls and less precision, but yeah, you can get one for as little as $50. You can get a pretty nice 2-burner plug-in for maybe $200 to $300. So it's really not too bad. If you're worried about the health impacts, but can't switch out your full range.
Yeah. Good. All right. So as I mentioned to everyone, I will actually send everybody a link to both this video and presentation as well as the previous ones. Probably take me a day or two to sort of sort that out. But the link that you saw at the beginning is where they all will be, and you're welcome to use those as you will. And we appreciate everybody coming and being here on a Monday night, and we hope you have a great rest of it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm going to put my email into the chat one more time, so I'll have my email as well.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
All right. See you, Chris.
Bye. Night.
Night.